A very good evening, Zimbabwe. You are listening to Studio 7 from the Voice of America in Washington. I am Gibbs Dewey in Maryland.
And I'm Blessing Zulu in Washington, D.C.
Tonight we are talking about the United States elections. Blessing, it seems, is a very interesting scenario today.
Indeed, it is a very interesting scenario with a record number of people actually voting, or I must hasten to say, already voted, because in terms of the numbers, America is nearing 100 million, something that analysts are saying was last seen in the 1900s. So this is a very significant election. People have voted, of course, in advance because of the COVID-19 pandemic. Many states allowed people to mail in their ballots. So this is why there's this record number.
Yes, and we've got our correspondents on the ground, Blessing, and we know that for somebody to win the presidential election, that is between the incumbent President Donald Trump and Mr. Joe Biden, one needs to amass about, let me say, exactly 270 electoral votes. So it works in the form of electoral votes. Even if you get the majority, of votes nationwide, you can't win the election, right?
That's very true. So this is why some very few states will determine who becomes the next president. These states like North Carolina, they are in play this year. You have Florida, very significant. You also have Pennsylvania, that Mr. Trump won the last time in 2016. But it's interesting that this year it's a bit different because Mr. Joe Biden, the former vice president, and the person representing the Democrats was actually born in Pennsylvania. This is why it is interesting. You have states like Wisconsin, that Mr. Trump also won last time, but that are also in play this time around. You have Iowa, you have Michigan. So these are very, very significant. And interestingly, again, this year, you have Texas, which is usually a Republican stronghold, but you have a record number of youths actually registering to vote, and many analysts are putting it up as a toss-up state. But of course, that might be stretching it. But that's how things are. Because just going back to 2016, you remember that Mrs. Hillary Clinton actually won the popular vote against Mr. Trump, but she lost because of this college vote system. Each state has got a certain number of votes. So let's take California, for example. Because of its huge population, it has got 55 rather college votes, if we may put it that way. And then you have DC, because it's a very small population, you only have 3. So if you win California, you already have 55. If you win DC, you only have got 3. That's what we are talking about.
Yes, kunjalo ke Zurandaba lamhla ke sixoxa lapha ke ngokwenzakala khona ngale ke khonapha eMelika lapha esikhona lo Blessing. Siyabona ukuthi kulokhetho oluqhutshwa khona ngapha umongameli Donald Trump lo mnumzana Joe Biden wama Democrats bangqikilana ukhetho lolu. Okumele anqobe kumele azuze lokho kuthiwa ngama electoral votes. Siyakwazi ukuthi manengi sibili kodwa kumele anqobe nge270 electoral votes. Kuya ngokuthi ke indawo izabelo zilabantu abangaki khona kwesithi population. Nxa ukuthi ke kulabantu abaningi ama-electoral votes abamaningi lawo. So ke khonapho ke siyabona ukuthi kulokhetho njalo lwama-senators kuzobuya labo o-sheriff lezinto ezinjalo. So ukhetho lolu lubanzi kakhulu kodwa bekusasatshwa nje ukuthi kungani kulokuxokozela kukhetho lolu. Silethemba lokuthi akusoze kuye ngasese. Kunjalo ke Blessing. So we've got our one of our correspondents on the ground, Mike Hobe. He is in Arlington. So let's bring him in so that he can brief us about what is going on the ground. So, Mike, tell us what is going on there.
Hi, Mr. Dube. Blessing. Thank you so much for patching me in. As you mentioned, right now I'm at Arlington Central Library polling station. So far, we haven't seen a lot of people come out to vote. In actual fact, A lot of people haven't gone inside the voting station. However, a lot of people seem to utilize the official ballot box that is right outside, which means that a lot of people that we have seen so far at Arlington Voting Central have been using the mail option instead of actually going inside. Now, when it comes to speaking to a lot of people, I've spoken to a couple of people who are election agents here, because I was wondering how a lot of people, how they're conducting the whole thing behind, during a time whereby there's coronavirus. And it seems as though they're taking all the necessary precautions. Earlier on, I spoke to a young gentleman who was busy sanitizing the pens. And I asked him, why are you sanitizing these pens? And he said, well, if you take a look at it this way, we have been holding the pens. There are people who are using these pens. And so when other people come in, we want to make sure that people are safe. So a lot of precautions have been used. Later on, I'm going to walk in during our live stream so that you can all see what is happening inside. And there's a whole entire setup, plastic glass that's there so that people don't have to address behind is the voting agent. On the other side will be the people coming in to vote and so much more. So yeah, however, in terms of the numbers, a lot of people have not come out today. And I managed to speak to the chief briefly earlier on. I'm going to try to get her back to come outside so that she can speak on air. But she was saying that is not something that people should be worried about here in Arlington County, because a lot of people already have voted using the early voting option and the mail-in ballot option. So just today alone, they're not expecting a large numbers to come out and vote. So that's what's happening here in Arlington.
Yes, Blessing, do you have a question for Mike?
Of course, Mike, the Virginia usually was a toss-up state until it was won twice by former President Barack Obama. And of course, in 2016, the Democrats again won in Virginia. This year is also significant in that there is a Senate race. And usually, I think this year, one of the issues that is coming up is the young voters. Are you seeing them voting today, casting their ballots, or it's, the elderly, if we might put it that way?
So, fact, at this
In terms of demographics. Mm-hmm.
At this polling station so far, I've actually seen the other way around. It seems to be the elderly. A lot of people that I've spoken to today alone, a lot of veterans, they were touching on several different things. I was actually asking some of them, saying, regardless of who wins the presidential election, what kind of policies would you like to implement? Even though a lot of the people that were coming out were elderly, they were still talking of policies that would in turn benefit the youth, that would in turn benefit people of color, that would in turn benefit Americans at all. So some of the things they were talking about is they were talking about issues in regards to empowerment of the minority groups in America. So like I said, I spoke to a lot of war veterans that were out here, people of different races, actual fact, black, whites, and Latino. And they were all touching on similar things that they want to make sure that, especially after recent incidences here in America pertaining to the Black Lives Matter movement and the protests and so forth, they want to make sure that whoever is the next president of America addresses those issues and that they ensure that minority groups are awarded a lot more opportunities of empowerment.
Thank you very much, Mike, and get close to the polling booth so that we can see exactly what is going on. In the meantime, we will talk to Mrs. Priscilla Ndlovu, who is in Washington State. So Mrs. Priscilla Ndlovu has actually voted Blessing, so she can tell us about what exactly is doing there. Welcome to the program, Mrs. Ndlovu.
Thank you. Good morning.
Good morning. So tell us a bit about what is going on down there right now, and when did you vote, and just briefly.
I think I voted maybe about more than a week ago, and after voting, they ask you to check your ballot paper to see if it has been received, or to look at the internet service place and see if they require additional information from you. I have already done that and verified that my ballot paper was received. And what is happening in Washington State is that a lot of people have already voted because it's a state that has been voting by mail ballots way back. So this morning they were just confirming that most of the states is about more than 70% people, the population, registered voters have already cast their votes, and the unfortunate thing today in this area is that rains are coming heavily. It's raining now, but they're saying that the heavy rains are coming in about 9 a.m.
Yes, nxa ungasitshela-ke ngesintu ukuthi okubona khonapho kuyini njalo lokuthi uvote nini.
Mina sengile nsuku ngivotile, ngibona ngani kwedlula iviki ngivotile. Senze ngalandela i-ballot paper yami ukuthi ngibone ukuthi ifikile lokuthi ngibonakala ukuthi kungaba khona yini okunye abangabe bekufuna kimi ukuthi signature ibi-right kumbe i-address kuyamatchana nalokho engikuthumele. I-state lesi state ese-Washington esivele abantu bebevota ngokuthunyezelwa ama-ballot paper for a long time, so vele abantu bakujayele lokho. Lamhlanje kuseni bavuye besithi khona ama-numbers abantu asebevotile in different counties. Almost all the counties, abantu more than 70%, or abanye even up to 78% have already cast their votes. So kutshengisa ukuthi lamhla ama-line azakube engxenye emalutshwana. Njalo okungaba luhlupho namhla ukuthi lilanga lezulu. Lapho izulu liyana kathesi nje ngikhuluma kodwa kuthiwa ngo-9 uyaqalisa ukuna kakhulu.
Yes, siyakuzwa kakhulu-ke. Blessing, if you can chip in there. She's saying there are rains in Washington.
Kune vari kutoona pazvivhitivhiti kana kuti vari kuteerera chirongwa chino nhasi tiri kutaura nezvesarudzo dzakakosha zvikuru dzemutungamiri wenyika yeamerica, asi pane dzimwewo sarudzo dzakakosha dziri mudare resenate nezvimwewo zvakawanda giti zviri kuvhoterwa nevanhu. Vamwe mastates kana kuti mamatunhu ari kuvhota kuti vobvumidza here kuti mbanje inge ichirimwa kana kutengeswa. Kune vamwe inyaya yakakosha iyoyo zvokuti inoita kuti vatoende kunovhota. Asi pane vanhu vanosvikayo 21 makumi maviri nemumwe chete vari kukwidza musarudzo idzi, asi vari pamberi ndivaJoe Biden vebato remademocrats navaDonald Trump vebato remarepublicans. Ndo pari kutarisirwa nevakawanda kuti pane anonge achikunda ipapapa idzo sarudzo idzodzidzi. Asi just going back to Mrs. Ndlovu. Mrs. Ndlovu, there was a controversy about this mail-in ballot, with some saying that elections can be rigged, people can vote twice. Is it possible to vote twice?
It's not possible to vote twice because, for instance, if I give you my scenario that I have been able to vote and I keep a piece of paper that days after I have sent in my ballot, I can go and check whether my ballot paper has been received. And once it has been received, there is confirmation that the ballot paper has been received. That means if I tried today to go and line up and vote, where am I going to vote because the system shows that I've already voted? I think the issue about cheating or people voting twice, it's a fantasy that is someone's head who is used to cheating, and they think because it might be easy to cheat, but I don't see how, because like where I am checking whether my ballot paper has been received is for the entire state. So if I voted in King County where I live, that means I can't go and vote in Snohomish County because the record already shows that I've already voted in Washington State. I doubt very much that that's possible. I don't know how.
And also two major issues about your state. There's the issue of COVID, of course. There are high numbers there, and then you also have the issue of the economy. Just talking to your neighbors, what are they talking about? What issues are they voting for?
I think the issue here is that Washington State is a democratic state. Even locally, and even voting for Congress and the president here has not come to campaign because he knows he doesn't stand a chance. People are very happy with the strategic measures that were taken by the governor. Remember, COVID in the United States started at Washington State, and the governor took some measures that contained COVID. Even other states that got their COVID numbers after us, we still remain as part of the Washington, the state that has lower infections, lower deaths, and we maintain to do so. And the governor has been very strict about masking and social distancing. For instance, I have not gone to work since March. Other states have opened. People still order food from outside. There are some people that sit outside restaurants, but there is still a lot of, measures that the government is maintaining to keep the numbers down.
Yes, thank you very much.
And people are voting for the governor. We are voting for the governor, and most of the people are very excited about that. He did a good job.
Thank you very much, Mrs. Ndlovu. So, Blessing, we've got a lady who has just voted, and this lady is from Zimbabwe. So let's listen to what she's saying about, having voted today in this critical election.
I feel like, they can make a change into the next 4 years.
Panga pane vanhu vakawanda sei paballot paper ramapiro?
Panga pane office tikuvhotera for the president. Also, we are voting in Arlington tikuvhotera for the county board president. And then we are also voting for the governor. And we are also voting for my budgets that we want to. Arlington is going to be committing to my certain upgrades, like Maria Chaisa kuma parks, Maria Chaisa for metro infrastructure, and Maria Chaisa, and also the most important thing was gerrymandering, where government will change the way the district maps are currently done. And we feel kuti no concern kuti differentize my minorities kuti wafambe for longer kuti wavote. Inini ndangofamba 5 minutes kuti ndikwanise kuvhota. Saka those district changes might mean kuti ndakwanisa kufamba for longer kuti ndivote. Saka those are the things that we were looking at on this ballot box.
Saka uri kutarisira kuti chichafamba sei nhasi?
Ai ndikutarisa kutofara.
Yes, Blessing, that's one of the people who has actually voted in Maryland, and she's very excited. And apparently, I met with Eric Ludeke, who is the Speaker of the House of Delegates. She actually leads the House of Delegates in Maryland. Let's hear what he said about this election.
I'm Eric Ludke. I'm Majority Leader in the Maryland House of Delegates, our state legislature in Maryland.
So, what are you doing here?
I'm here to help out. I'm actually not up for election myself this year, but I'm here to help out other candidates, including Joe Biden and Kamala Harris.
So, what's your take on the election today?
Look, I have never seen this much energy in an election in my lifetime. People are excited to vote. They're excited to change America.
Are you happy with the turnout?
Yes, absolutely. We have seen the largest early voting and mail-in voting turnout in Maryland's history so far, and that's true in states across America.
Why should people vote?
Well, look, voting, we live in a democracy. Voting's our most basic right and the most important thing we do as citizens. And more importantly, it's a way for us to express what we want the government to do. And I think a lot of Americans want our government to do better.
What happens if people don't vote?
Well, I think if people don't vote over the long term, I think it harms democracy. People need to turn out.
What's your message to Americans?
Turn out and vote today. Let's take America back.
So there you are, Blessing. That's one of the people who is in the House of Delegates here in Maryland. So then Mike Wobe also was at one of the places, polling stations. Let's hear what he got from there.
Hi, sir. How you doing? Good. I'm good. Could you explain to us what you're doing here and why you're doing that?
Sure. So we're taking the pens that they use to mark their ballots, and then collecting them out here and sanitizing them, and then we'll put them back in so they can use them.
Okay. Why is it so important for you guys to sanitize with hands?
Well, they've touched our hands, they've touched the voters' hands, and potentially even more. So we're just trying to cut down on any way we can potentially spread germs and just make things as clean as possible.
What are the precautions are you guys taking to ensure that COVID doesn't spread here?
Well, as you can see, we're all wearing masks. We're keeping as many doors open as we can to keep the airflow. We have several hand sanitizing stations everywhere, plexiglass dividers up, things like that.
Awesome. Thank you.
There you are, Blessing. So there's a lot that is happening, sanitization of some utensils and so forth. It all goes down to COVID, right?
Indeed, very important indeed, because I think there are some countries like Zimbabwe that are saying that you cannot hold elections when there is a global pandemic. But the World Health Organization has made it clear that there are certain precautions that any country can take so that people can actually vote. And we are seeing democracy here in America. People are able to vote, and they are taking those precautions, sanitizing their hands. And of course, for those who are just joining us, we are talking about U.S. elections, the presidential elections, and also the Senate elections, where currently in the Senate, the Republicans are leading with 53 seats, and the Democrats have 47. And if there is a split, today there are only 35 seats that are up for grabs. So if it's a split of 50-50, whoever wins the presidential election has the vote that will decide the balance of the Senate, meaning to say the vice president will come and cast his or her vote to break any deadlock that might come up in any discussions in Senate. So it's very significant. Keep straight to you.
Yes, Blessing, we've got Mr. Tabang Nare. Mr. Nare is a Zimbabwean political commentator. He's a very independent person. So thanks for joining us, Mr. Nare.
Thank you, Mr. Dube, for declaring my independence.
Yes.
Very good.
So what's your take on it's election day today? What's your take on what is happening?
Well, I think as Mr. Zulu has highlighted record voting, it's estimated over 100 million people expected to vote. Some are estimating it of people who are eligible to vote.
Yes, Mr. Nare, sorry, you got cut off, so go ahead.
Oh, okay. Thank you. As Mr. Zulu said, that over 100 million people are expected to vote, which is well over 56% of those people that are eligible to vote. So record turnout, and I had the opportunity just to visit outside one of the polling stations as one of the people here in the community, and people are stepping in and going to vote. But as has been said before, the majority of people voted through postal ballots, mail-in voting. And so what is awaited now is just the counting of those votes.
Yes, Blessing, go ahead.
Yes, Mr. Nare, just talking about the turnout, is it not a bit confusing that one would think that with this global pandemic, the coronavirus, many would say, well, I better stay home and be safe. Why is there such a record turnout?
I think people obviously appreciate the link between the vote and social services, including education and health, the vote and the economy, the vote and foreign policy, even climate change, which is an issue amongst young people, issues of student loans. So those are some of the things that have especially made young people to step up and come and vote, because they are hoping that if there is some change in administration, one administration may bring in more grants so that students, when they graduate from university, college, graduate with the least amount of debt. So those are some of the issues that are of interest to students, and issues like foreign policy, issues like race relations, how African Americans and other, and also how immigrants in the US are treated.
Yeah, masikhangela ke sibona okwenzakalayo babanali. Ungathini ngokhetho lweMelika?
Ye kukhanya hayi abantu baphumile sibili labo akade bengavoti besiyavota. Kwezinye indawo kuyakhulunywa ukuthi kuvulwa ngo-7 ekuseni abantu kade sebemile phandle besenza i-social distancing ama-6 feet wona lawo, kodwa kule mdwendwe yamalayini besiyavota. So wonke umuntu okade engavoti ugijimela ukuthi ilanga lingakatshoni ebe esetholile isikhathi sokuvota. Labantu abaqhatsha abantu bakhuthaza laba abasebenzelayo ukuthi hayi bona ukuthi uyathatha isikhathi kumbe isikhathi sakho selunch ugijime uyevota. So into eqhatheke kakhulu, wonke umuntu olelungelo ugijimela khona.
Xa sisikhangele ke ukhetho lolu luqhatheke kanganani babunalo? Uphinde ufake ngesilungu.
Yeah, ukhetho luqhatheke kakhulu. Siyazi ukuthi iAmerica yilizwe elikhokhelayo umhlaba wonke, liyadlelana le European Union, liyadlelana le-Africa, liyadlelana nje la wonke amanye azwe, Japan labo Russia. So wonke umuntu umhlaba wonke ukhangelele ukuthi ngubani osezaba ngumphathi ntambo upresident lapha eAmerica. Kuzaqhubeka khona yini uDonald Trump, beni kuza ngena uJoe Biden. Kithi Africa siyazi ukuthi kulezinto eziningi esisebenza ngeAmerica ngazo, kulezinto zama-sanctions eZimbabwe, i-African Growth Opportunity Act, zonke izinto lezi lokuthi umongameli uzavakatshela yini eAfrica engangena. So izinto eziqhathekileyo kakhulu zonke lezo.
Yeah, ufaka la ngasikhiwa nje ngamafutshane sibese siya kuMarvelous.
Thank you, Mr. Dube. So a record turnout in these elections, as Mr. Zulu said, over 100 million people have voted, mostly through mail-in voting because of the corona pandemic. So there's a lot of interest in the election across the board, from senior citizens who are worried about their health care. You have people like young people, students, who are also worried about student loans and saying to the government, find a way of reducing student debt, from the university or college fees, find a way of increasing grants and more money for students. There are issues about jobs, creating more jobs, issues about reacting to the pandemic, to say America has always been known to be at the forefront of healthcare. An increase in testing, an increase in medical facilities and support for hospitals. So those are some of the important things, and Americans are going out to vote across, all the different states. Maybe something that might be of interest to people back home is that if someone is a convicted felon, in some states, they are not allowed to vote. So those are some of the things that are happening, and there's been an argument that some of the populations, like African American populations, have a higher percentage of people who are convicted felons. So as a result, they are disenfranchised because they won't be able to vote. So it's an interesting elections. We've had predictions of 52% for Mr. Trump, 48% for Biden, 52% for Biden, 48% for Trump, margin of error 2%. So it's going to be an interesting wait tonight as we wait for the counting of the votes.
Yes, Blessing, we've got Marvelous Mhlanga.
Marvelous, ungathi ukuthi wakwanisa kuenda kupi chaizvo uye vanhu vari kuti vabuda vakawanda here kana kuti vanhu vakavhota kani?
Kuno kuArlington kwandiri pari zvino vanhu vashoma. Pandasvika panga pane vanhu vashoma, asi muri kunzwa iye zvino izvo vanhu vati wandei kumashure kwanguko, handisi kuzoti muri kuvaona here. Avo vamwe vari kutaurawo vachibatsira vanhu kuti vanovhota sei. Asi ndaita rombo rakanaka nekuti ndabva ndasangana nechizvarwa cheZimbabwe chiri pano chiri kuvhota kekutanga muno muAmerica. Saka achataurawo kuti zvafamba sei muzuva ranhasi. Asi ndafara nekuti ndakwanisa kuwana mukana wokupinda mupolling station ndichiona panovhotera vanhu, ndichiona panoiswa mabhaloti nezvimwe zvakadaro. Saka ndo zvimwe zvanga zviri kuitika kuno, asi vanhu vashoma. Vazhinji vari kuti ivo vakatovhota, vakaita early voting, vamwe vakaita mapostal votes, vari kuuya vashoma, vari kuuya apo neipapo, asi sekutaura kwandaita ndafara kuona chizvarwa chezimbabwe.
Here rimwe dambudziko rekuti musi wekuvhota muamerica haisi zuva rezororo kana kuti yatingati holiday, nekudaro vanhu vanogona kuzouya kana vamwe vacho vabva kumabasa. Rikaitewo rimwe dambudziko here?
Ichokwadi ichocho Blessing. Vamwe vanogona kunge vasina kuuya nekuti vari kumabasa, nekuti nhasi vanhu vari kumabasa, asi sekuona kwandiri kuita vazhinji vakavhota vachishandisa posho kana kuti yavanotiyo early voting, nekuti pano ndichienzanisa neelection yatakapedzisira kuona, ndakaenda kupolling station ndaiona maraini akareba zvakanyanya chaizvo muwashington DC, asi nhasi pandaienda pane imwe polling station muwashington DC kwanga kusina vanhu, uye zvino kuno kwandiri kuarlington vanhu vashoma, uyezve tiri kuona kuti vanhu vakati kurei ndo vazhinji vatiri kuona vari kuuya.
So, Marvelous, give us what is happening in a nutshell. What's going on there?
Here, what I'm seeing, people are coming, but in drips and drabs. It's not like what we saw earlier on, or 4 years ago, when Mr. Trump was elected. When I went to one of the polling stations there, they had huge lines. So from asking around, most people said they had early voting or did the postal voting. That's why we're not seeing so many people. But like what Blessing said, some might come later on during the day. But I was lucky enough to find a Zimbabwean who's a first-time voter. So I'll put her on the line so you can talk to her and ask about her own experience.
Yes. Yes, go ahead, Marvelous. Tafatwa, welcome to the program.
Hello, thank you for having me.
Yes, you voted, right?
Yes, I did. I just came from my polling station here in Arlington County.
What's your experience in terms of voting there? Did you enjoy it? Just tell us.
This has been an exciting experience for me, mostly because it's my first time voting in the presidential election. I voted prior for Congress and senatorial, but this is my first time voting in a presidential election, which is one of the most important elections that we have currently in the U.S.
So now, Blessing, chip in there.
Tafanzwa tichitarisawo kuti uri kuvhota kekutanga zvanga zviri nyore here, nekuti vamwe vanoti zvinhu zvacho zvinenge zviripo paballot paper kana vanhu vacho varipo vanenge vakawandisa zvikuru. Zvanga zviri nyore here? Wanga uchitoziva kuti tichavhota kudai 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 here kana
kuti takanakira munomu tanga tichidzidziswa tichiudzwa kuti munhu unofanira kuvhota zvakadai. Tanga titori nemasample examples of what will be on the ballot box and the issues. Saka wanga uchiziva kuti ma-issues auri kuvhotera api. Saka muno muArlington County, tanga tisiri kungovhotera for the presidential, you were also voting for the governor, you were also voting for the changing of how the district will be changed in terms of voting, the voting map. And we're also voting on things like the school board. We're also voting on how Arlington County will be using my funds, akaita se infrastructure, my funds on my amounts anoenda to parks and recreation. Saka zvinhu zvese izvozvo zvandandichitoziva ndisati ndasvika kunoku, nandaita research on them and how important those things mean to me. So I was able to actually be able to make my informed decisions on every thing that was on the ballot box for me. And in terms of my experience on voting, panga pastomborina maline, kunoku corona is a big issue for us, and most people came in and voted early and made sure that on the day of election, pange one will not be coming or come along lines. So that is why urkona tukuta one warukuta sprinkle in. And then I made the decision not to vote early, to vote on election day, simply because I wanted to experience, and also because I felt like President Trump, there will be a big wave on November 3. To vote the opposite direction. I thought I too on November 3 will be counted as part of that blue wave. So, and that is why I made the decision to get no. However, I am prepared. Ndaenda kapfeka mask yangu and now it's a problem yekuti yekumira line. The only thing I'll have to say that was a little bit different is because I had made the decision to initially do early vote via postal. but I changed my mind to do in person. So vanoiti provisional voting, kana wanga usina kuvhota, kana wanga usina kuenda with your for your what you had intended to do, vanoti you have to, kana wasvika papolling station, either unouya uchingoisa ballot box yako mukati, kana kuti unoita provisional voting whereby you just fill out additional forms and explain why, and just make sure kuti hauna kuvhota sezvawanga waka.
Yes, I think she has been cut out there. Blessing. Are you back?
I'm sorry,
Yes, okay.
I'm back again.
Well, quiet, yes.
Yes, yeah. So that's why that was my experience at the polling station.
Yes, so looking at voting as a person from Zimbabwe, can you make a contrast between how voting is done here and how it is done in Zimbabwe?
Enini, I had the opportunity to vote in the last election in Zimbabwe. And the main difference that I saw between that election and this one was, I felt pretty, there was more privacy. I found kuti pandakavhota the last time in Zimbabwe, even though we were being told kuti your vote is your privacy, vanhu vaitya to exercise that right. They were not 100% sure kuti zvandiri kuvhotera izvi ndezvangu. Munhu anga achitya achizvibvunza kuti ndezvangu here uye kuti vhoti yangu icharespectwa here, which is one of the concerns even yandinayo in this election, is kuti the leader will accept the final result of the people. My wish, my votes, the ballot and will matter. What I don't want after today is to have an election yemunhu asingabvume chido chevanhu. So that is a concern, which is a concern now for the first time for Americans. We are facing that issue whereby we actually have a president whom we feel does not respect democracy, which is the biggest issue for me that I'm having right now in America, because that is why I felt that this is a country which has respect for democracy, and I'm finding myself in a situation where I'm finding the leader that is currently here does not respect the wishes of the people. So
Blessing, chip in there.
Okay, thank you so much, Tafaziba. For those of you who are just joining us, we are talking about U.S. elections. Of course, Americans are voting for a new president, and of course, pitting President Donald Trump and former Vice President Joe Biden, and there are also Senate races that are key. At the moment, Republicans have 53 Senate members, and Democrats 47. That is also a very key. This is why many are actually lining up to vote. In some states, it's actually snowing in New Hampshire, for example. And like Mrs. Mprov said earlier on, in Washington State, it's actually raining, but people braving all that in order for them to cast their votes. And there was, of course, a time when women were not allowed to vote, but now they can actually vote. How significant is that, Tafadzwa? You are talking about voting freely. You also talked about issues. You don't just vote for the president, but also issues that concern you, like how the council is going to be run. How important is that?
It is very important for me, the privilege to vote is a privilege. It's a privilege that I take very seriously, especially being an immigrant and having that opportunity. So no matter how much I may feel, obviously not all my issues are going to be addressed, but I have to respect that privilege that I was given. The privilege, so many people fought for me to get to this place. And as a woman, I especially take pride in voting for the Democratic Party, because I feel that is where I get my most representation. If I look at the Democratic Party as a whole, the fact that they choose a woman as a VP candidate, the fact that there are so many women and so many minorities who are actually running right now into office, which is the opposite of what we have of the Republican Party and Trump's cabinet, where I do not see anyone who represents me, immigrants, and who represents women and who represents minorities. So it's very important kuti, because I know kuti my issues I'm going to know first, kunyanya my issues immigration. Right now tine vana who have been separated from their parents nenyaya yekuma parents vanga vakasungwa because they had mama immigration papers. Whilst I understand the importance of following the law of immigration, but there is no reason why vana should be separated from their parents. Izvezvi vana ivavo the system iri kutoshaya vabereki vavo kuti vakaendeswa kupi, which is a human rights issue. So those are the issues that I'm looking at kuti tikutadza kuaddressa my issues ema immigrants. And then ndichitarisira futi nenyaya yekuti yekusungwa kunoita mabhoyi nekuuraya kwatoita the issues of racial injustice to African Americans and black people in general. Inini ndakasungwa nhasi ndakamiswa nemapurisa havandibvunza kuti are you from Zimbabwe? What they see is a black person. What they see is an African American. So kufa kwao kufa kwangu. So when I now come and vote, those are the things that affect me.
Thank you very much. Yes, thank you very much, Professor. Now, we've got a Trump supporter who is in Maryland. We talked to him while he was outside the station there, the polling station in.
My name is Joseph Gillen. I live in Silver Spring, Maryland, and I'm here representing the local Republican Party at our election day here on a very windy day, and just having our literature available, passing out to people, voters as they come. A lot of people have come and voted early or voted by mail or drop box, so the crowd seems kind of light this morning, but we're still here to be part of this great day.
So, are you happy with the turnout?
I think the turnout has been large throughout this whole period. There's less today than there would have been normally on election day just because so many people have already voted.
So now looking at this election, how crucial is it? How critical is it for America?
Very crucial because it's two different worldviews that people are projected by the parties. It's not just about two individuals. You know, they'll come and go, but it's about two different worldviews on the what direction the nation should go in the world.
Now, looking at the way the whole thing is happening, it seems as if there are some who are saying there could be violence. Is that a possibility?
It's possible. Some people are very emotional and tensions get high. I hope not. I pray that it's not and that it's minimized and anything that happens will be controlled. So
talk to Americans. Tell them about the importance of this election.
I think it's important to, if you haven't already, to go out and vote because and reflect on your values, and also when you do vote, be willing, be accepting of those of your family and friends who may have voted differently. That whichever way we vote or decide on this, we're still family and friends afterward.
How important is it for America to be one? People getting together after elections, making sure that the country moves forward.
Oh, it's all important, definitely. That people, be willing to cooperate. We're never going to agree on everything, and every couple of years we're going to have these contests, and that's a good thing. But at the same time, we shouldn't be so hung up on our views and what we think of the other side that we can't get along in the meantime.
So, do you have a message to Americans?
I guess just to tell you what I stand for is I'm supporting President Trump. And locally, the local congressional candidates and the ballot initiatives here in Montgomery County to have more equal representation. And I know we're also picking some candidates for judges and school board. So yeah, I have my favorites, and I hope they win. But I'm just praying that, regardless, everything stays peaceful.
There you are, Blessing. I think you heard it all from a Trump supporter in Maryland. Is praying that there should be some kind of peace after the elections.
Of course, that is very important because we understand some businesses are actually boarding up. They're afraid that there might be violence. But of course, the FBI and other local security agencies are saying they are ready to deal with any malcontents who try to disrupt peace. But of course, it's important that after elections, people shake hands and they move on. But he's also raising very important points there that they are voting for judges, local budgets, all that. Those are some of the issues that are on the ballot box against. And of course, there are reports that Wall Street opened on a high note today as investors are expressing confidence that a clear winner would be declared in the US election and that a fiscal stimulus deal would be swiftly passed. Remember, the Congress, the House of Assembly, did not quite agree with the White House, Congress and White House, on the issue of the second stimulus bill. So many are hoping that after this election, whoever wins, be it Mr. Trump or Mr. Biden, they will work with Congress on a stimulus bill to aid not only small businesses but also individuals. Remember, people actually got a check. Kids were getting like 600 or so. And many families were getting like 3,000 from the tax office just to help them in this COVID pandemic, since there's a record number of unemployment because people are simply not going to work. It's not safe in most states to go out. So those are some of the key issues.
Yes, there's so much enthusiasm to vote, Blessing. I met with one of the ladies that had just voted. So let's listen to what she said after casting a vote.
My name is Shanika Rawlings.
So you've been voting, right?
I have.
How do you feel after voting?
I vote in every election, so I always feel like I'm doing my civic duty. It's always a great experience to vote for me for some reason, but in order to have your voice heard, you have to vote.
So this year, do you think this is a very critical election? And if you think so, why?
Of course, every election is critical, but I think people are now knowledgeable about how important voting is. So in a sense, to say that it's different as far as its, level of criticalness, not a word, but I would say it's always important to vote. So yes, it is a critical election because every election is critical.
So are you happy with the turnout, of people coming here to vote?
I am. I've actually stopped by even for early voting just to see if people are actually coming out. And I am satisfied to see that there's long lines continuously and that they've even opened up more voting sites in our county.
This year, what is actually driving people to vote with so many numbers? Huge numbers of people are turning out.
I think people are just now seeing the effects of what it means when you don't vote. So I think people are now knowing that they have a voice and that it's important for that voice to be heard.
So what does it mean if you don't vote?
It means that you don't want your voice to be heard if you don't vote.
Talk to Americans. Tell them about this election.
Americans, this election is very important. You deserve to be heard. You have the right to be heard. Therefore, you should go out and vote.
Yeah, bakhuluma abantu Blessing lapho yakhuluma umama lapha uthi abantu kumele baphume bayevota ukhetho lolu. Kwanyangazani sibili baledlabuzani lokuthi bavote ukhetho lolu. Siyabona nxa sikhangela ke ukuthi ungahamba njani akwaziwa ukuthi kuyaphuma kutheni. Kodwa lokho silayo lapha ke uMarvelous Mhlanganya uye kanye lo Mike Wobe. So singaya ku Mike sibe siya ku Marvelous asenze njalo Blessing.
Tine vatori vedu venhau vari kunzvimbo dzakasiyana siyana vari kutenderera vachiona kuti vanhu vari kuvhota sei musarudzo dzemuamerica dzinova dzakakosha zvikuru, asi tiri kuona kuti vanhu vakati wandei vanenge vanga vati vhotei nekuda kwechirwere checoronavirus. Todzoka kwauri Marvelous, zvamira sei? Vanhu vari kuuya here kana kuti patangosiyira ndipapo pekuti vashoma vanenge vari kuuya uye vari kuti kudiwa vari kukwanisa kutaura navo?
Pari zvino vachiri vashoma vari kuuya, asi ndofunga manga muri kunzwa vanhu vanga vari kutaura kumashure. Ndiri kuona kuti kunze kwepolling station pane vanhu vari kuuya vachitaura pamusoro pemaamendments bills avari kuedza kuti vakwezvere vanhu kuti voterai pakati nepakati. Saka taona vamwe baba vemademocrats vanga vari pano vane bhiri ravo ravari kuedza kuti vati kune vanhu voterai pabhiri iroro. asi pari zvino aiwa vanhu vachiri vashoma. Asi chandiri kuona ndechekuti vanhu vari kubvumidzwa kana uine zvauri kuda kutaura. Ndaona zvakare pane vamwe madhemokrats vari kuwanikwa vachimhurisa vanhu vachivapa bhaloti riye rinoratidza kuti unovhotera apa uchivhotera ani. Saka ndo zvimwe zvandiri kuona, asi handina kuona munhu akamirira marepublican. Vamwe vanga vari pano madzimai maviri vanga vari kuti vari non-partisan, vachitaura ivo kuti hapana bato ravakamirira, asi vari kuda kungoratidza vanhu chete kuti munoenda nepapa uchinovhota apa nezvakadaro zvakadaro. Asi chikuru chandiri kuona nyaya yecovid-19 iri kuwanikwa iyo ichitaurwa zvakanyanya. Pane masanitizer, kana usina mask uri kubva wasvika uchipuhwa mask. Muri kutoona kuti yangu iyi ndakatopuhwa neVOA, uyezve pandiri apa ndakapfeka bulletproof rekuti kana zvinhu zvikaipa sekutaura kwamamboita kuti pane mabhizimisi muWashington DC pari zvino tiri kuona vanhu vachiisa makadhibhodhi tomboti mapuranga kuitira kuti kana pakazoitika mhirizhonga pawanike pasina zvinoputsika. Saka ndichibva pano ndiri kuenda kuWashington DC ndichinoona kuti kwakamira sei. Tambonzwa kuti pane vamwe vari kufunga kuratidzira, asi handina kuvaona pandambenge ndichipfuura nemuWashington ndichiuya iko kuno. Saka ndo mamiriro akaita zvinhu, uyezve iko kuno kune mapurisa akamira achiona achiongorora kuti achichengetedza kuti pasave nemhirizhonga pane vanhu vari kuvhota. Asi pari zvino kubvira pandauya vanhu vari kuuya zvishoma nezvishoma, anenge achiuya ari kungovhota achibva abuda, havasi kutora nguva yakawanda.
So, Marvelous, is it possible for you to show us the background, exactly what is going on, in terms of the polling station? Yes.
Actually ran away from showing you the background because there are a lot of people who are actually trying to get their amendments for people to vote for them. So I don't know. But can you switch the camera so they can see the background?
Yeah, so now looking at what is going on while we're seeing the background, tell us exactly what is going on, there.
Okay, right now, like I said, we have a lot of people that are actually here also pushing their own agendas. Like, they have some amendment bills that they want people to vote for. There's a gentleman right here. I'm sure you'll be very happy to speak to you.
Yes, go ahead. Yes.
Excuse me, I'm doing a live here, but you were enthusiastically talking about your amendment. Tell us a little bit, what exactly are you talking about?
I'm talking about Amendment 1. It's to establish an independent redistricting commission to fairly redraw lines in 2021. So it's an amendment to the Virginia Constitution, and it will create an independent commission of 4 Democrats and 4 Republicans and 8 citizens to fairly redraw lines. Neither party has a numerical advantage, and the process occurs in a transparent, clear manner where we can all see the deliberations, the discussions, the hearings, and all the documents that are being reviewed to help the commission make its decisions on how to redraw maps. It helps prevent gerrymandering so that politicians are not choosing their voters, but it's voters choosing their politicians.
So far, have you been successful in convincing anybody? Because you have been out here and you have been really talking to the people.
Well, I want to bring information and facts to Virginia voters. Unfortunately, there's been a lot of dust kicked up that has made the conversation very confused. So the people who do not agree with the amendment say, vote no to end gerrymandering. I'm saying vote yes to end gerrymandering. So it's very confusing. And so what we need are facts to help us understand what the amendment is. And if there are criticisms, which it is not a perfect amendment, to understand that in the proper context. So this is not perfect, but it is much better than voting no, which just leaves us with the status quo. The status quo allows things to go on as they have been going on, where politicians go behind closed doors and in the secret of those closed doors redraw maps. And historically, those politicians have not been able to resist the temptation to gerrymander to do either racial gerrymandering or partisan gerrymandering or incumbent gerrymandering.
And are you for any particular party, or who are you standing for?
Well, so this issue is supported by people on both the left and right. I happen to be a progressive. I have voted Democrat, but because my local party, the Arlington Democrats, have decided to recommend no, this is the first year since 2008 that I am not participating in this process, handing out Democrat sample ballots.
Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Congress. Yes.
Ndozviri kuitika panze pe-polling station kuti pane vamwewo vane zvavo zvavari kutaura zvavari kuda kuti vanhu vavhote, uyezve vamwe varipo, pane vechidiki vari kuuya vachiita yatingati volunteering, vanga vari kubvumidza havo kuti tipinde mukati, asi pari zvino ndinoona kuti hamuna vanhu vakati wandei, asi unopinda nepapa pamuri kuonapo wodzika nepaseji iyoyi wopinda mukati, asi vanga vari kuti haubvumidzwe kuti utore kana kuti yatingati yevhidhiyo yemunhu anenge ari kuvhota nezvinhu zvakadaro, unless kana akubvumidza, nekuti vamwe vanozowani.
I think she has been cut off, Blessing. So go ahead, Blessing.
Of course, for those of you who are just joining us, this is Studio 7 Live Talk, and we are talking about the US elections 2020. And, just for a quick update, President Trump today lashed out at leading Democrats and predicted a bigger win than 4 years ago. This is in an interview that he did with Fox News. And former Vice President Biden, his main rival, of course, was campaigning in the key battleground state of Pennsylvania, where he was born. And according to their camps, we understand Mr. Trump will be watching the returns tonight at the White House. And of course, with Vice President Mike Pence and Mr. Biden and his running mate Kamala Harris, we understand they'll be converging in Wilmington, Delaware. That is a state Mr. Biden represented for years as a senator. So those are the places where they will be. Delaware and, of course, Washington, D.C., where Mr. Trump is. It's not a very long distance. But previously, they would be in a hotel somewhere. Gibson have attended those watch parties as the results trickle in. But this year, of course, because of COVID-19, that tradition is not happening.
Siyabona Blessing khona kokhulumayo ukuthi ya kuyakhanya ukuthi namhlanje umnumzana Joe Biden lo nkosikazi Kamala Harris onguye osekela uBiden ukuthi babe khona ngale ke eWilmington khona ngale ke eDelaware lapha besebemelele khona ukhetho ukuthi impumela yalo ukuhamba njani. Kuzokubuya ke umongameli Donald Trump uyabe khona lapha eWhite House eWashington DC ela khona ngale ke umnumzana Mike Pence onguye amsekelayo. So sizabona ke ukuthi kuyahamba njani. Bajala ukuthi nxa kuzawenziwa khonokho babe sendaweni ke ezijiyeneyo. Ngiyakhumbula ukuthi kukhetho lwandlulayo uMike Pence lo mnumzana uTrump babe khona ngale ke ehoteleni yabo. So ke kodwa lo nyaka ngani kulohlupho kancane. So ke when we are summing up here, let's go to Marvelous so that she can just sum it up for us. Marvelous, less than 30 seconds. Go ahead, sum it up now.
So from here, I'm going to try to go to the White House and just see what is happening. I heard their Blessing saying President Trump and Vice President Pence will be waiting for the results over there. But I know that it's been boarded up, but I'll try and see if I can catch a glimpse of what's going on at the White House. And then, follow up on the results to see what happens. And like you said, Mr. Biden and his deputy also will be watching out for the results. So it will be interesting to see what happens. But over here, it's still slow, unless maybe people will start coming later on in the day.
Yes, Marvelous. Thank you very much. So, Blessing, we have come to the end of the show. I think we have to thank all the people who actually contributed today. So we had Mrs. Priscilla Ndlovu, We also had Mr. Tabang Nare and with Mike Wove on the ground, and Marvelous Mtanganyauye, she was also on the ground. And we had some kind of videos that we used today on our live talk discussion. Signing off is Gibbs Dube in Washington, D.C., saying good night, Zimbabwe.
And Blessing Zulu, thank you so much, everyone, for listening and watching our broadcast.